Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the start of the newest week of the year 2021. Making yourself number one, we have Mr. Gavin Kerr in the corner over here. Gavin, how was your weekend, my friend?
It was good overall. Somewhat. It was very productive, but nothing like very exciting. I pretty much just cooked at home, cleaned a lot. I just worked a lot, and then I finished the audio book that we were talking about last week for the book club.
So we've started the book club, and one of the first things that we did was have our group of people meet this Sunday, and it was actually really cute. Christina brought her mom, and her mom
Yeah.
FaceTimed in, and you could tell her mom has not done much in front of a camera. She was like, the minute she realized she was on, but the conversation was so wonderful. The book we're reading is, do you remember the name of it? It's Brene Brown.
It's Daring Greatly.
So the first chapter is about vulnerability and being open and vulnerable to the things around you and the people around you and yourself. And how does that create leadership and all that? And the conversation was absolutely like it didn't stop. We could have gone for like 3 hours, and that was just chapter one. We broke down leadership. We broke down what it means to have to be vulnerable. Like, so let me ask you, Gavin, the same thing I did with Christina and her mom. What does it mean to you to be vulnerable? Because each person is different.
I don't know. No, I'm actually very serious when I say that. I was talking to Crystal because like I said, I finished the book, so there's a lot of stuff and a lot of psychology that I listened to in it that is later in the book, and I do a thing called oversharing, which is the issue that I have. So I actually, and it's a defense mechanism to not actually be properly vulnerable to anyone. Yeah, so it's very difficult for me to be vulnerable to anybody just because I wear everything on myself. I'm very open about pretty much everything. I don't set boundaries with people.
So I think that's perfect. Actually, I'm excited to upload this later today. So that is exactly 100% one of the things we talked about. And it's funny because yours is a little different than mine. Like, so I explained vulnerability is different for different people. And I'm a very empathetic person, and I use my pain and vulnerability to connect with people. But because of that, it opens up for people to feel free to think I'm weak and take my kindness as weakness and stuff. And we were saying how for me, being vulnerable in my eyes is not talking to people. Being vulnerable in my eyes is me like going up on stage and singing. Like you going up on stage and doing karaoke or a concert or something. I can't go up on stage and do a stand-up routine. I really cannot. My mind just thinks I'm different. But if you put me in front of a room of 50,000 people, I won't bat an eye if I'm giving a speech and I know what I'm talking about. I don't know why that is, but people who can go in front of karaoke, they can go in front and make people laugh. I envy them because of the fact that that's them being vulnerable. And for me, it's open rejection very quickly, where in a setting full of thousands of people, let's say, I don't feel that open rejection. I feel like even if I sucked, there's so many people there, nobody's going to boo me off stage. You know what I mean? Where you're like, yeah. So for me, being vulnerable was completely different. And Christina and I's conversation, her mom was the cutest thing ever because her mom like turned her camera off so she didn't have to see herself talk. So it made it a lot of fun at times. And her mom was talking about what vulnerability meant to her. And we mentioned boundaries, and I think that's very crucial because Gavin, I agree with you. I'm an oversharer, and I let my boundaries down quite a bit. And the truth is, it's breaking those barriers, breaking those boundaries, and it's creating boundaries, not creating barriers.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but
that's what I'm learning to do right now. I'm learning to set different boundaries with people in general, and then also how to properly make myself emotionally vulnerable to at least to Crystal. So
Ooh. I thought you were emotionally vulnerable with Crystal already.
In a sense, not
Okay.
nearly as much as I'm very, very good at mimicking vulnerability, but how much of that I actually feel
Yeah.
is different.
Huh.
So
I guess I never thought that with you because
yeah,
you're a very vulnerable, raw guy. So I just always saw that was something you and I had. I didn't realize that you were holding emotions back on certain things like connections.
not so much holding them back. So I guess the best way to describe it, because I'm like a sociopath or psychopath. I do understand emotion. I do feel emotions and everything like that. But like if something goes wrong, like for whatever reason, there is a think of it like a filament or like a lamination
Mm-hmm.
where it's transparent. You can see through it, but there still is a barrier there.
Mm-hmm.
So if shit does hit the fan, it's like, okay, well, instead of this crumbling and falling apart, the outside just got a little scratched, and maybe the inside felt it, but not as much.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So I'm very, very good at showing and acting more vulnerable than I really am.
Mm-hmm.
But then as far as and like I'll understand it too, but then as far as like letting it process, sink in, marinate, and then truly set in, that's where I struggle. As I struggle in allowing it to set in. I'll usually move on to the next subject in my mind. I won't ponder on it too much.
I think that's actually a good thing, just so you know. Like me, I ponder and I rip things apart in my head, and I have 50 different scenarios, and I'm ready for anything they say. But it goes along exactly with what the book talks about. Like, and we'll switch from this in a second because this is a new thing we're working on. Is the book
Yeah.
club, and I really was excited to talk about it with you guys, and I'm glad you finished the book. I'm 30 minutes away from finishing the book. That's because I did the audiobook. That's how I
Yeah,
know how
no, I
much.
did the audiobook. Yeah.
But like we got into this conversation yesterday and we just couldn't break from it, and about being vulnerable, about being how vulnerability it opens up creativity, but it also can open up pain, anxiety, different types of things. And it was just interesting how different people view vulnerability in different ways. But we also have something new that just came out this week. We had the first episode released. Gavin, tell us a little bit about your show and what you're up to this week. You're doing some pretty good things, bud.
Yeah. We had a first episode with pardon me, talking between the notes with Lena Scissorhands was on from Infected Rain. It was an amazing interview. Like I said, we went 2 hours solid. We definitely could have gone a lot longer than that, but we both had stuff to do, so that's why we ended up ending it where we did. But I was very happy with the length of it. She's very, very sweet, very humble person. Actually did not realize how like famous she is until because I did research on her. I looked her up and everything on everything except for her social media. So
Hmm.
I knew the band had like a very big following and everything. So I listened to a bunch of their music, most of their albums. Um, and then I looked up interviews of her and watched a bunch of those prior to that. But then I go on their Instagram afterward, and she has like 150,000 followers or something. And yeah, that's like when I looked at her band first, I'm like, oh, they got like 50,000 followers. That's awesome. They got the little blue emblem and everything. And then I click on her really quick. I'm like, oh.
It is funny to me how
Yeah,
she can be the lead singer and has that much bigger of a following
yeah.
than her own band. Like, is that something you've noticed before?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of the times that'll be the case, just based on the singer's personality. She also did a lot of stuff too. It wasn't just the band she did. She was also a model. She was a hairdresser. She was very in with different tattoo artists where she modeled for them. So she had a lot of different connections that got her that fan base, that following. But I think the coolest thing about it is just how down to earth and how humble she was. She's very motivating as well. Even in her music, she has songs talking about like living life to the fullest and getting off your ass and doing stuff. And she like there's a part where I just like was like giggling to myself, and I tell him like, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just giddy with how passionate you are about this. So
No,
it
I
was a
love
great
it.
episode. Yeah.
You really, honestly, the energy there was phenomenal. Today I'm gonna this week I'm taking you shopping for a camera, no matter what, because that was the one thing everybody kept saying. Gavin, we need to get you a better camera. You're too handsome. You're too handsome. We can't have Gavin look off. Like I'm like,
I know
love
this
how
camera does suck. It's all right.
the first thing out of everybody's mouth, he's too handsome. I've never had that scenario in life, so buddy, enjoy it. Like
That's so sweet of you. Thank you.
So this morning, I want to say hello. We have just a few comments in here, but we love everybody coming on. Stuart Lone Wolf, it's so good to see you, buddy. I hope you're doing wonderful. Thank you for coming in. Mandy Atterbury, thank you for stopping in, saying hello. Brett Gordon has made comments. We thank Brett. I would like to also Mandy thanks our group for support and everything that we've given her. Guys, that's what this is all about. I text Gavin yesterday. My depression has kicked in very heavily over the last few days. I've been having a really hard time breaking from things. And I text Gavin and I'm like, listen, I need you. And he was like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm angry right now. I'm on a walk just trying to balance myself and it's not working. And he was like so calm about it. And I was really grateful to have people in my life like Brett, Gavin, and the truth is Stovetop Yum Yum, Miss Maritza. She is going through it right now. That poor girl. Guys, do me a favor. Go give Maritza a Stovetop Yum Yum a subscribe and a follow. She had an incident at work, and she had her eyes cornea actually scratched.
Oh,
and
God.
She's like finding out later today whether she's going to be able to go back to work Thursday next week. The last 2 weeks have just been like a lot of, so like, I'm going to make this sound weird, but that's a traumatic experience that could have gone a lot worse, but I'm so glad she's okay.
Yeah.
I had a friend had a seizure, no joke, a seizure while driving, and he has no symptoms of ever having a seizure before. So he had to stop and pull off the road, and he's a truck driver. I had 2 friends last week attempt suicide. So it's just been like, I felt like the energy of the world was like coming at me in different ways. And I looked around. It's
humbling people, apparently, because it's not quite killing anybody. It's just saying, hey, remember how great life is.
Yes, exactly. So Stovetop Yum Yum, I told her what I was going to do is look at her YouTube network, and I'm going to like share one of her episodes near the end of the episode for everybody. And that way we spread some love, some positivity, and give her the appreciation she deserves, because Stovetop Yum Yum does a lot with us. She's in pain right now, but getting herself through that next phase in life is awesome. But
I do want to know really quick, did you tell, I'm glad that he is okay, and that's the only reason why I kind of chuckle a bit. Your friend who had a seizure while driving, you said he's never had anything like that beforehand.
So he was in a car accident a couple weeks ago. Morning, Suze, you deliciousness. But he was in a car. He drives a truck for a living.
Yes.
And in his personal car, leaving the truck, like to go home, all right, somebody rammed him in the back, 40 miles an hour. Since then, he's been having trouble sleeping. He's been having like different things. Like all of a sudden he'll be like, and I mean this, his right eye will go like blind, and he can't and he's just like, I don't know what it is. So doctors are still working on figuring out what it is, what's going on, but he's never had any seizures before. And then all of a sudden, he was approved to go back to work like a week ago. At work, he's driving his truck, and then all of a sudden he's like, I don't feel right. And he pulls over, and he calls his boss on the walkie and CB, and goes, I don't. And then he just started having a seizure, like right there and then. They had to call an emergency ambulance. They gave him the week off of work last week. He might lose his job, as weird as this sounds, because it's such a traumatic experience, and he doesn't know if he'll be able to drive again.
No, I understand that. Was he able to come out of the seizure on his own, or did he need medical attention?
He came out of it on his own. But
I guess what I meant to say was, did he come out of it before anyone showed up? Or then, because in my mind, the way you explained it originally, he like pulled over, had a seizure, and then was like, well, that was weird.
No, he
And
pulled
just
over.
got back on the road.
I'm gonna go home now.
Yeah. Like, what the
finish my day.
Yeah, God,
No,
what that was all about.
he literally pulled over. His story is he pulled over, phoned the ball, walking the boss. The boss turns around and says, "Stay where you're at," and then the seizure kicks in. He didn't respond to the boss, and by the time the ambulance got there, he was coming out of a seizure. But it was the first time he's ever had one, so he wasn't allowed to drive, wasn't allowed anything. He's a great guy. He really tries to put his best foot forwards on everything. But the truth is, this was a very serious thing, and I'm glad he's okay. Stovetop Yum Yum threw a question thing in here, and I love her for it. I will be coming to cook live next Monday, come hell or high water, even if it looks like I'm a one-eyed Willie. You know what a one-eyed Willie does? It helps you twerk better. It helps you twerk better. My mom twerked for you yesterday, Maritza. We were outside doing yard work, and my mom goes, "I want to make your girl on your show, Maritza." I'm like, oh my God. So needless to say, I made my mom a TikTok yesterday. And then, hey guys, how about the Hideki Matsuyama talk about pressure and vulnerability? I'm sorry, I don't know what this is. Do you, Gavin?
No. I said, I was at work all weekend, so I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, buddy. Can you send us a little? I think, if I'm wrong, I think that is the volcano that erupted this weekend.
There was a volcano?
Not a small one either, bro. Like big. Like when I say big, like they had satellite images. I'm gonna have to find it and all that. But like, he won the Masters. So no, it's not. This is a sports reference. I'm sorry. Way different topics. That is really funny. No, he did win the Masters. That's right. So he won the Masters, which is one of golf's biggest thing, and he's the first Japanese golfer ever to do so. So that's a huge accomplishment for him. If I'm saying his name wrong, Tokyo, please let me know. But I believe it is Hideki Matsumaha. And if I'm saying it wrong, damn, the link I put here has gone. Sorry. But he did win that. But yes, there was a volcano eruption. And what was awesome is they had a satellite that was over it doing the weather forecast. Yeah. And you could see the clouds going over. Hideki. There you go. Thank you, Tokyo. You could see the clouds going over. And then all of a sudden you see this boom of like, and like, bro, you don't miss it. Like, you're like crazy amounts of eruption. They have it. They said it's covered in ash. Matsuyama, and it sounds so racist when I say it, but like I'm not trying to be. It's just the tone of how I say it. But it was.
I thought you sounded more like a valley girl. Matsuyama.
So we've had a very interesting start to the day. I'm gonna bring my article in for the first article, but I will look up more and we'll talk about the volcano tomorrow and have a little bit more information. I love whoever just did that. Oh, Gavin, did you do that?
Do what?
The Gavin Kerr Entertainment. I love that you created this.
Oh yeah. That's my Facebook page with all my stuff on it. So I just started sharing it to that, and then I shared it to my personal as well.
I love it. It looks great, buddy. It looks good.
Thanks.
So here's my article for the day. I hope you're ready for this. So 108 countries, yes, you read that right, are joining forces to do good on Good Deeds Day. Now, here's the thing. We did not know about this, and this article came out today, but this happened yesterday. This is a very cool thing. There was over 1 million people. 1 million individuals of people from all over 100 different countries took part in Sunday's International Good Deeds Day. You could see these are young people here getting ready to do their thing. Look at her giving peace. That guy's got more hair than I've ever had in my life. It was launched 15 years ago in Israel as a very small local event. A true spirit of dreaming big and getting those done has helped the project expand to include participants in 108 countries, unifying a day of good. Every year on April 11th, enthusiasm grows as this year's event centers around thousands of projects dedicated to bettering society, all under the 2021 theme of reconnecting. The founder, Shari Arison, says that despite the pandemic, doing good and being good is always possible at any time and under any circumstances. It was heartwarming to see the outpour of goodwill and acts of loving kindness that people do, helping others in a way that is possible at such a time. Now, here's what's really cool about this. There was all 50 states will participate in Pointing of the Light, Habitat Humanity, and other organizations. A virtual chess and leadership training will be held for at-risk youth. Absolutely love that. In Costa Rica, this is their 8th year taking a part of it. A whole month of good deeds are planned, from donating personal kits to hundreds of hospitalized people to concerts, blood drives, and food festivals. In Panama, 24 hours of good deeds are planned. In the UK, hundreds will take part in a hands-on project across London that goes all month long, allowing people to choose their way to do good. I believe that if people will work good, think good, speak good, and do good, the circles of goodness will grow in the world. I think this is a phenomenal way of starting the day. We have to be able to look at each other in the eyes, know each other, who we are. We have to be able to see the difference of who we are by bringing that out for one another, by pulling this out for one another. And the truth is, that was a whole rest of the world joining in. All 50 states, all these different places. I 100% wish I would have known about this, but there's places that are doing things. Gavin, this week, you and I should see where we could volunteer and just go out and volunteer somewhere, see what we can get in there.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely down for that. That sounds like a blast, actually.
I love it. I love it. What's your article today?
I'll bring him a second. Really quick, for those who are watching, because we do have a couple people watching on my personal Facebook. If you click the YouTube link on there, we'll be able to see your comments. You're commenting on my personal thing, so I can see it if I switch over the tab, but we cannot see it in our general thing for whatever reason. It doesn't show. It doesn't pop up here. Who I got watching on my thing? Just want to give you a quick shout out. Let's see.
What do you mean? Oh, because it's on your personal page?
Yeah.
It should come in here, buddy.
I don't see him right now. Jojo Hamilton and Tristram.
I don't know. Oh, well, we'll figure that out later, because the truth is, I know mine does. When I put my personal page up there, I see it. So I'd like to
get a delay?
Sometimes, but not that, not like more than a couple seconds or a minute at most.
Okay. Maybe it's because I just added them later in the show. I don't know.
Maybe, whatever. But so tell me about your article, bro. I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. I love when you come in.
I'm really excited about this. This is pretty nuts. So, future green fabric that works like a smartphone unveiled by scientists.
What? Get into this.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
A new fabric developed by a Chinese team of scientists that works like a smartphone could have applications in communication, navigation, healthcare, and safety. So you can see it here. Like, here's a biker. He has it on his wrist. It's he's wearing his clothing, his regular hoodie, and then on his wrist here he has his directions, which would have been so helpful so many times to have had that. On the back here, on this gentleman, can you see the screen? Yeah,
I can see the screen.
This gentleman right here on his long sleeve hoodie, and he's sending text messages. I don't know what. I think this is also on somebody's sleeve. They're typing out on a keypad. So this high-tech garment can improve the safety for. What was that?
It's the coat. It's the coat.
Yeah, no, it's the fabric itself. Like if the shirt I'm wearing right now, if it was made from this material. From my understanding right now, I got to read the article. From my understanding, if this shirt was made of that material, I could have the long sleeve pulled down, and I could have my iPhone right here.
I'll be quiet. I'll let you answer.
The high-tech garment could improve safety for cyclists, motorists, or emergency responders. For instance, the brush of the sleeve could supply a textile map on their arm in an instant. The inexpensive material turns a jacket into a touchscreen, and that could be in the shops by Christmas, according to the SWNS new agency. Powered by solar energy, it combines conductive and luminescent fibers with cotton. Wearable technology has been promised for years, but creating large displays integrated with functional systems has proven challenging. The research at the Fudan University in Shanghai overcame this issue spectacularly with a display fabric almost 20 feet long and 10 inches wide.
What?
And then that's what this is right here, this blue glowing fabric. That's just a giant screen, essentially. So the corresponding author who described the new electronic textile in the journal Nature last month, Professor Heisenberg Penn, said the cloth is flexible, breathable, and durable, making it ideal for the real world. Conventional solid-state material is not readily compatible with textiles because they struggle to withstand the natural deformation that occurs when fabrics are worn and washed, said Peng. So apparently you can. I guess I had to assume you wash this somehow, but I'm very curious on how you have to wash it. If it's like a dry, clean only kind of thing.
I don't know. I can't throw my phone in the washing machine. So how would I throw an outfit that can be digital? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that being said, though, you have to think it has to be at least water resistant, because if this is made for bikers and cyclists and first emergency response units, especially for if you're a firefighter, you're getting covered in ash, you're getting soaked in water, you're experiencing extreme heat.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't see how they could make it where it could be like that. That's why this is such a fascinating thing.
Yeah. See, in experts, the electronic textile work as a navigation tool showing an interactive map. It also performed communications by sending or retrieving messages via Bluetooth connection with a smartphone. Pardon me. Professor Peng said the display of the product the display is produced by illuminating units that form where the conductive and luminescent fibers meet at the contact points of the woven fabric. See, they survived 1,000 cycles of bending, stretching, and pressing. Brightness remained after 100 cycles of washing and drying, so it's completely washer safe. Washing and drying. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So, okay,
for
would you buy
100
this?
cycles.
Would
Absolutely.
you buy this? How much is it?
I'm not sure yet. I
Okay,
might say at the end of the article.
I told you I'd shut up and I didn't.
You're good. With an additional for more applications, which is what I'm waiting for, because humans are very clever, but we're also very clever at doing the same thing, just more efficiently.
Yep.
That's why we do stuff. We're very cleverly lazy. We like to figure out how to do things easier.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah. It doesn't say anything about any sort of cost here.
Do they have a link to the website?
It does say they're not just concepts. In fact, the product with such displayed textiles at large scale with low cost, we're providing them to companies. I think they will start being used this year, at least no later than next year.
Really?
Yes.
Well, all right, I want to buy one of these, but I have a feeling these are going to be like $1,000.
They might be, but in all honesty, that doesn't seem like a lot for what you're getting.
When you buy a car, all right, do you buy it? You don't want I wanted a Nissan Kick the first year they came out. It used to be the Juke, blah blah blah, and everybody said you don't want a first year car. It's like buying a cell phone, the first generation of a new cell phone. You don't want the new one. You don't want the newest one because there's going to be technical. There's going to be difficulties. Yeah. So this might be $1,000, but I think you're going to have to wait a year or two before it has like some updates. Because could you imagine you go into your closet, you hang your coats up, you hang your shirts up, and then plug everything in to charge?
No, it's solar panel.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Really?
Yeah, it's solar energy.
That's pretty stinking cool. I think Tokyo Bento's comment's perfect here. Imagine the possibilities when worn by their prisoners in their work camps. Like, think about that. And I don't mean this in a weird way, but you don't know if somebody's clothes can do that or not with technology. They could literally be like creating a way of breaking out of prisons.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah, you know. And then this one, if you made a full suit of fabric, the stealth application will be exploited by the military first. 100% agree.
I just thought, do you think this thing has airplane mode?
So the first iPhone ever created had more technology in it than the first spaceship that landed on the moon. And if anybody
I do know that, yeah.
Anybody says we didn't land on the moon, I'll let you have your comment, but I'm not going to go down that path. And it's only because of the fact I don't really want to like have to go down all the conspiracy theories past. Maybe we do an episode on that one day.
Okay. But regardless if we landed there or not, which we did, we still have more technology in our phones now than the computers used to get us there. Or at least to make the calculations.
Could you be like, oh, hold on, my jacket. I need to, take over this plane for a second. Let my jacket auto drive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy to think.
Oh my God. Have you seen people with Teslas like really starting to trust the autopilot on it?
People have been doing it for a few years. And what's interesting about it is the amount of people that get pulled over, and I'm not kidding for falling asleep while letting it do auto drive.
I believe that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So
we don't yell at pilots for doing that, though.
Because we don't know they fall asleep.
Most of them are asleep. If they have a long flight, it is on autopilot, and they are asleep.
So pilots, send us a message and let us know what you think about flying and falling asleep in the air. What if you just doze off and you hit your head into the column?
Well, I'm sure they're buckled up when they do that.
Touche. You know who used to be a pilot? Well, he wasn't a pilot, but he was in the Air Force, and he's one of the most handsome guys I've seen in a long, long, long time. He always brings a smile. He always brings us joy. He teaches us leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brett Gordon. Hello, Mr. Gordon. How are you today?
I am awesome. I'm awake. I woke up at 5:45 in the morning because I'm out here on the West Coast, and feeling great for that time of the day.
Good. Glad to hear it.
I love it. So you're here to teach us. Oh, go ahead, Gavin. I'm sorry, buddy.
Really quick, did you see Tokyo's other comment? It'll be used for advertising. What do you think the legal things for that are going to be? Anybody can wear Nike. Anybody could have a Harley Davidson jacket. Like you just have that logo there.
Correct. So at the same point is that, what about like the fact that like we can right now, oh my gosh, she comes in just to say hi to you. I do love it. But it makes sense for me. But for real, buddy, what are your thoughts on having technology be able to be used directly from your clothes? I just pictured them one day being like, oh, Brandon Croucher, you are too ugly to be in public. Boop! And all of a sudden my clothes like lock me to a chair. And I'm like, I can't move.
It'll be even worse when they figure out how to just kind of look through your clothes. So you could be the emperor with clothes and then they switch it over to the emperor with no clothes. That would be pretty impressive.
Yeah, they put cameras in it somehow.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening today that are going to be coming to life, and we don't even know how that's going to really play out. I mean, you can take it from something like the drones that we already have, and everybody talks about how great they are. Me being from a military background, I think about what could be done with them that is not so good.
Yeah.
And when people are yelling about not having regulations or trying to overregulate it, you got to think about what else can be done. And just recently this morning, I was reading about how the military has come out with something that they can put under your skin to detect if you have COVID. Yeah. So they can put a chip in, and then you can detect if you have COVID. I'm like, oh, that's a scary proposition there.
It's very scary, but that could also be really kind of cool and helpful if it could detect other things as well.
Oh, believe me, it's not going to be just restricted to that. If it
that's what I'm saying. So like, oh, hey, you have a tumor that's starting to grow in your appendix or something like that. Like it can sense those things. Like, hey, you don't know this, but you've developed diabetes. So like, oh, well, thank you for telling me that. Now I can start handling this issue. That would be pretty amazing.
And also say, hey, wow, you just passed the McDonald's. You really are hungry.
Yeah.
All of a sudden your brain's like, oh, I need McDonald's. I don't know why the car's turning. My clothes are turning me and my brain's telling me here. Really, we have no control over it. I don't want to go political, but I do have my own issues with the shot, and it's nothing bad. It's just I don't want to be overworked on that. Imagining having something under my skin where they could do it. There's other ways to do this. There was a thing I saw recently where you drop something in your toilet and you go to the bathroom. You just pee. And it tells you, like, whatever color it turns, it tells you whether you failed or passed a drug test. Just so you know, I failed. And I was
pregnant.
Yeah, I was pregnant and failed my drug test. I don't know what happened here.
I was gonna say, does it do things other than just talk about a drug test? Because you can go to the CVS and you can buy just a packet of the drug strips.
You can buy a packet to find out if you're going to test positive for cannabis. You could buy one for heroin. You could buy one for meth. And I'm sitting there going, who walks into CVS and goes, excuse me, where is your heroin test? I need to know if I tested positive or not.
Does it stain your toilet?
I don't know. I didn't test it that well, buddy. I only dropped it, peed, and followed the instructions to see if I tested positive for cannabis.
Because what I could think of is if it stains your toilet, that could be if you have somebody that you're a sponsor for, or you have a family member who's an addict or something like that, and they won't take a test. So you do that to see if they will, or see if they do or not, and it temporarily stains your toilet so they can't scrub it out.
Wouldn't that be invasion of privacy, though, without telling them?
I mean, that's up for a personal call.
Touche. So
if you leave skid marks in my toilet and I find them, is that an invasion of privacy then?
Did you feed them beforehand? Because then you provided them the way to make the skid marks.
I'm not force feeding you. I'm a damn good cook. All right.
Touche. So, Brett, I'm going to turn the show over to you. You're going to teach us leadership today and help us with our mental health. I think this is a perfect way to segue in, especially with the fact that we've had so many people having issues with COVID, regulations, confusion, and you are bringing a positive way for us to put our mental health out there, and we're grateful that you're here today. So teach us.
Okay. Well, I found this. Actually, I was watching the new version of the X-Men, I guess is what it is. It was on HBO, and I watched this thing, and at the very end, they had this comment, which I had heard before, but this is, I think, very apropos to today's world. And it's really about this old Cherokee chief. I'll kind of read it while it's on the screen. An old Cherokee chief is talking to his grandson about life, and he says, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, self-doubt, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith.
Mm.
The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson then asked the grandfather, which wolf will win? And the chief simply replied, and this is where I change it just a little bit. The chief replied, the one you feed. And I say, the one you feed most.
Mm. Mm.
And this is what we really need to think about, because we do have this kind of thing going on inside us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We do have the angel and the devil in our ears talking. Which one we listen to and which one we feed is up to us.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm really kind of bringing out here is watch what you eat. Not like the food Gavin can cook, but what is coming into us all the time in terms of information, in terms of propaganda, in terms of authorities, in terms of the media, in terms of the books, in terms of the other thing that I watched yesterday, which I had never seen before, was Fahrenheit 451, which I don't know if anybody's seen that, but that's where essentially it's like in the future where the job of the fireman was to burn all the books. And you're burning the books because the books are in one way, shape, or form to one group or another offensive. So they just burn them all. And the whole goal is to go from 6,000 languages to one common language, because then we're all going to believe the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's never going to happen because we've got things that are going on around us all the time. And when we run into depression, it's usually because we are following a path, or what I consider to be like, you can spiral up or you can spiral down. And when you start feeding yourself the negative stuff, you tend to attract more negative stuff. You tend to eat more negative stuff, and that takes you down further. You have to consciously feed yourself positive things so that you can lift yourself out of that spiral or that vortex that's taking you down. You have to consciously choose what you're going to eat in terms of the information that you're bringing in. And remember, when you're out there doing like Google searches, or you're watching TV shows, or you're listening to people, you don't know what their agenda is behind the whole thing. So you have to pay a lot of attention to the fact that nothing is said without having some sort of an agenda. As much as we want to say that we're completely neutral, that's almost never true. And I don't say never because I can't stand using terms like never and always. And when I do, I got to really catch myself, because rarely is that ever the case. It's always some form of gray. And this goes also into, do you listen to the white wolf or the black wolf in that picture? And the question really is, in between the white and the black are, an infinite number of shades of gray.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we need to learn to live. There are those that want to say it's black or white or blue or red or whatever. And it's really in between that we live. And we need to choose what we're going to bring into our body, into our soul, into our mind every single day. And not only every single day, but with every single minute virtually, because we are constantly being introduced to different viewpoints, different media, different self-talk. And self-talk is one of those things that a lot of people don't really recognize. They're like, oh yeah, I saw this in the news. I saw this, when I was out walking around. I felt this, it's that self-talk that we really need to be careful on what we eat, because oftentimes, like I said, if you're in a downward spiral, we tend to feed ourselves negative thoughts. And then we continue to stay in that negative mindset because we haven't, actively chosen to get up and go to another room, which is the positive room. And I really encourage people to do just that. If you are in this negative mindset and you're sitting in a room, get up. I mean, force yourself, get up, go somewhere else, physically walk somewhere else. I've talked about the fact that you should hydrate, drink a bottle of water, get some, most of us live in a constant state of dehydration. That is also not good for your body chemistry. But getting up and physically walking into another room to change your surroundings so that you can help to change your mindset, because your physiology will follow. Go ahead.
How does one do that? So I want to ask you Tokyo Bento's question about what book would you choose to memorize for yourself to help that. I want to answer that after this first one, but the first one is, if you're changing your setting and you're changing your atmosphere, the first thing you should remove from that would be what? For me, it's my cell phone and all technology. And that is literally so I don't have any excuse to look at anything and be distracted.
Well, I follow Tony Robbins extensively. And one of the things that he really talks about is your triad. And your triad is physiology, focus, and language. So the easiest thing to change, and the thing that is going to affect the others, is your physiology. So when I say get up and walk, you're immediately changing your physiology because you're moving. When I say drink water, you are immediately changing your chemical physiology because you're bringing in hydration.
Yeah.
That is going to help you to change your focus, to change your what you're focusing on, and then actively choose the language that you're using to describe however you're feeling. If you're saying like, man, this is really killing me, as opposed to, man, this is kind of annoying.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? It's a tremendous difference in how you're going to respond when something is killing you versus something is annoying you. These are the types of things where you can leverage your physiology, which is literally, like I said, just getting up and walking and changing the surrounding around you, because what you see is going to be different than where you were in your depressed state. These are really important concepts that give us the ability to make those changes ourselves. Though I will say that, I've been in kind of the leadership arena with even in some of the Tony Robbins events. And there's times when he gets people to look deeply, and when they start doing that, they start to freak out, and then they want to run out of the auditorium. And I've been there where I've had to kind of try to stop them or calm them down and get them to go back in, because you don't want to walk out halfway through something. And it's because you got to get, he's taking you into a place so that you can then move to another place that's further advanced and helpful to you.
It's a setup and a punchline in a sense.
Right. Exactly. So if you leave in the middle, you just kind of left in the depressed state and didn't allow the process to go through to bring you back to the elation that you're going to feel once you're able to recognize and understand how you can deal with those depressed states. So it's really critical that we again choose what we eat and feed the positive or the good side as much as possible. And granted, you can't do that always. Anybody who says you can always do something is going to run into challenges. Just like anybody who lives in just black or white probably is having some very difficult challenges every day in their life because we really live in the gray. So, yeah, those are the things that I felt were really important. And, you know, they're a part of these different movies that we see all the time. The message comes through in different ways, but we need to actively choose how we bring that in. And we actively have to choose which wolf we're going to feed, because oftentimes in these movies or in life, there is a positive and a negative. It's our choice as to which one we're going to eat and which one's going to affect us the most. You can take tremendously depressing or traumatic experiences and turn them around and see the positive light in it. And I know that, you know, you've talked about this many times, whether it be, you know, like the girl who got her arm bit off by a shark and then she's back out on her surfboard. Why? Because she looked at things differently than others who were like, oh, wow, you know, I'll never get back in the water again type thing. So these are the types of things that we really need to pay a lot of attention to. And we forget about that. We forget that we have the choice as to what we eat and which wolf we feed. So the other thing that I really like about it is it goes to our and I say this kind of lightly, but seriously, our Native American roots. I can't go back and say I'm part of a Native American tribe. That's not true. I am wearing Gathering of Nations shirt. I've been to the Gathering of Nations. It's the largest North American powwow, and it's absolutely amazing, the energy, and to recognize the Native Americans for what they've contributed. I mean, it was also the Iroquois Confederacy that was actually one of the things that the founding fathers used to develop our Constitution. So, you know, looking back for many different reasons and the philosophies and beliefs of the Native Americans, I think is just super empowering, and I follow it quite a bit. My girlfriend is actually a medicine woman, and it's amazing the things that I've learned. I mean, even as simple as burning sage. So here's another way to kind of help change your physiology. Burn sage. And whether you believe it's a cleansing or not, I'm going to tell you that the smell of it is changing your physiology. And the belief is that sage is cleansing your room of evil and your spirit and so forth of you know, things that you need to get rid of. So it's just another thing. If you taste, if you smell, if you hear, those all actually change you physiologically, which then can change your focus and your language.
Nice. Wow.
I like that. Very well said.
I want to know, do you believe, or do you have an opinion on if if social media, if movies, music sort of romanticizes wallowing and festering in your own sort of self-pity and pain sometimes, where like I know where I will feel like a Pink Floyd kind of reference, comfortably numb if something really truly upsets me, and I'll sort of sit there for a while and just kind of like be, and a lot of times people are upset, you go through a breakup or a death or a loss of job, something that is traumatic to your life. We like to, a lot of people like to sit and listen to sad music and just really just kind of make it worse in a sense on them. But that's our way of coping. What do you think the relationship with that is?
Well, I think that you know, coping mechanisms are many, you know, and as diverse as the shades of gray, right? Consistently watching negative things is going to be a challenge. If you occasionally do, or if you mourn for a while, you're okay. But if you're going to mourn, if you mourn somebody's death for a year, that's not normal. Yeah. It is something that you have to then actively choose a different meaning of the death of the person. In fact, you know, like I always say, and even my dad, who's still alive, he's like, don't have a funeral and a wake for me, have a party.
Yeah.
You know, celebrate the time that you had with the person as opposed to constantly mourning the loss of the person. The memories of that person, the positive things that you are mourning are still here in you as positives. So use those to your advantage. And, you know, you talk about music or you talk about movies. Now, I don't watch horror movies. That's just, I'm not a, I find them to be negative to me, and I have bad dreams. So I don't watch those, but I do watch intense things, and I do watch, and I listen to music that is intense. Back in my day, they said, you know, listening to Ozzy Osbourne was going to make you demented because, you know, he's biting the heads off of bats and all that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of music I listen to.
That was actually an accident. Little side story. Somebody threw, I don't know how the hell this person got a hold of a bat, but they threw it onto the stage. He thought that it was a fake, like, rubber Halloween bat, bit the head off of it. As soon as he, like, bit into it, he realized, oh, shit, this is the real deal. And then he ended up having to get rabies shots directly into his stomach for, I believe, months.
Well, yeah, it's a series of shots. Yeah. I understand they're really painful, but, you know, it's one of those things where, okay, so I did very well in school. Yeah. And people talk about how the music that, like Ozzy, would dement you and take you down this terrible path. That's not true. I mean, I'm a living example of it. In fact, the music that, you know, that you sing and how you sing it, a lot of people will look at that as being somewhat demented or mind.
Oh, I got messages when I was still in the band. Like, we received a couple messages from people saying that it was devil worship music. We're like, that's not even close to what we're singing about, but okay, thanks for listening.
No, and that's why, you know, when you were, I watched your interview with Lena Scissorhands.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with her immediately. I mean, she's a gorgeous person inside and out.
Absolutely.
You listen to her sing, and it's like you, when you're singing in your more natural tone, it's a beautiful voice. And then you can go into this rage, and it's a completely different feel. But and I'm not one to listen to words that often, but sometimes the words are positive, sometimes the words are negative, and sometimes the message, how you choose to receive it, what you choose to eat from that message is your choice.
Yeah. I think you can definitely tell with musicians when they are making lyrics just to have different sounds over the melody, and when they are making lyrics because they want a message to be heard.
Right. And that's why I when you say, you know, should you, or, you know, do you have to, you know, the types of music or books or movies or whatever that you listen to, how are they going to, you know, affect that upward or downward spiral? It actually depends on how you're going to receive the message in them as opposed to the movie itself. But I personally don't, you know, listen to or watch horror movies because they just don't resonate well with me. I see where Tokyo Bento is saying that they have a 1-year mourning period.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, that even culturally it's different.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I mean, I lived in Japan. I lived in Okinawa for 2 years when I was in the Air Force. I lived off base. I enjoy that. And I've been up to the Tokyo area and so forth. In college, I actually did research and a paper on the religion of Japan, the Shinto religion, which is what was perceived. And here's another one of, you know, white or black. It was said that the Shinto religion was what created the desire for Japan to conquer the rest of the world. And that's a bunch of horseshit. That's not true. It was people that take over or usurp the religion in order to gain the following of the people, because they follow the religion, and then others take over, who's giving the message of the religion, and then people follow it. It's the Shinto religion, I thought is an amazing natural honoring of nature. So again, yes, there's a 1-year mourning period, but if you're just spending your time mourning, and I don't think that this is what the Japanese do. They don't just close themselves in. I get that they don't participate in celebrations or vacations, but they also don't just focus 100% on the mourning of that individual. And in fact, I think even during these mourning periods, you're recognizing the meaning, the message, and the helpfulness of the person that also passed away as well.
Absolutely.
That's the critical aspect of this, that I think that to allow yourself to be sad for a time is natural. You're gonna.
Yeah.
You can be angry for minutes, but if you start taking that anger into hours, to days, to weeks, that's where you run into the problems. That's where you need to change your
it's a process of different stages that you need to acknowledge and work through one at a time.
Right. Just don't stay in that negative state that's for any significant length of time before you either actively look inside and help yourself, or seek help from outside. And that's also where I work with people and businesses and leaders, because oftentimes you run into those things, and you just need some people to be able to have a comfortable talk about what's going on, and hopefully through that redirect your thoughts in your language.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Brett. We're going to be moving on to the next segment here. So you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. All right.
All right. Sounds great. Take care.
You as well. Coming up next on the Morning Brew here, coming up next on the Java Delight. So this man, he's a 3-time international bestseller author of leadership style books. He has been on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and over 70 radio shows. He's worked 35 years in corporate America, with 21 at a C level, which means he reported to the CEO of different organizations he was a part of. He was VP of $5 million, $50 million, and $500 million organizations, which taught him that what works in one work in the other, just with different scaling. Okay, I understand. My bad. He's in the background laughing at me right now, I'm sure. I'm trying to read and replace all the I's with he. So he is passionate about helping others. Oh, is Brandon there giggling at me now? Yeah, there he is.
I'm here. I was reading his stuff in the background as well. I had a little bit of a thing I had to run out the door, out the room for a second for. Sorry about that. No, our guest. I didn't mean to laugh in the background, buddy. I was laughing at the fact that I stumbled on the same things. I made notes of it. So he has had many books. He's had 3 different books become New York Times bestsellers. He's a TV, radio guest host. He has his own YouTube network. His mission statement is to build leaders, one person, one team, or one organization at a time. I believe and teach servant leadership, and realized early in his career that once he focused on others, individuals' successes, his came naturally. He has a whole bunch more. I've been going through his stuff all morning. It's super exciting to have him on. I'm really grateful to have him here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Villareal. Hello, Mark. How are you? Good to see you.
Hey, it's great to be on. So thanks for having me. Sorry to make it so difficult to introduce me there.
Oh no, you're good. You're great.
It wasn't you were reading your bio, and sometimes like I go in and edit them, and sometimes I don't. And today I was going through, and I have like 20 questions already written for this interview. After reading your bio, going to your YouTube page, and all that. And the truth is, I didn't even know where to like start editing, because I'm like, he's done so many good things, and I don't want to just say
Yeah.
but like the first question I had, what is a servant leader?
Servant leader realizes that, first of all, it's everything's built right within any organization. The more that you serve and help others obtain their goals, you focus on them, your leadership or your success will come naturally. So if you focus on what does it take for your success, what are your weaknesses, how can I coach you, what can I do? In fact, I would always have my leaders go out to whatever business that I was a part of and ask everybody, what is it that I could do for you today that will remove a roadblock, help advance something, that really takes something off your plate. And because that starts creating a mindset that we serve you. And as we do that, I can tell you that coaching becomes much easier. Reprimanding becomes much easier, as part of coaching. Correction, it just builds a great culture. So it encompasses all of that.
What is some of the stuff you've dealt with servant leadership? Like, how have you been able to develop a whole platform on this? Because you really have. I was going through your YouTube. I was going through your books. You have 2 children's books. One is a bestseller as well.
Actually, they're both Amazon bestsellers, but it's part of the children's series called The Adventures of Park Ranger Brock Cliffhanger and his Junior Park Rangers. And that was just one, children's books are harder to write.
No.
Because you want to research it, but you want to bring it to a level that it captures the child. And one of my books, as you know, called Leadership Lessons for Mom, actually my most successful to date. My mom would always tell me, I never want that little boy in you to grow out of you. And here's why. When you're a little kid, you believe you can do anything. Hey, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a forest ranger. I want to be this. And then somewhere in life, you realize, well, that's too difficult, or there's reasons I can't do that. But if you have that little boy in you, you'll always know that you can dream big. And so that's part of what I started writing children's books for, so I could pay it forward to keep them dreaming big on what they could accomplish. But I also put that forward in leadership in any of the organizations that I've dealt with, but also with coaching and consulting, and how to build that within each individual and then in the team. And that's where the servant leadership has really helped. Early in my career, and this maybe was on the bio, or I was what was called a turnaround specialist, and I just had a natural gift to go into a business or businesses and really decipher quickly, why things were going bad, but then building a plan and turning them around. And that was always done through people. It wasn't done, hey, Mark was miraculous. It was, let me quickly define who the leaders are. And, certainly they say, here's our leaders, but are they true leaders? And who are the future leaders as well? And so that's the way of serving them, but also testing them. The biggest thing I preach is when you start leading any team, first thing you do is teach them how to problem solve and make decisions. And so I had a problem solving method. I had it on the wall of a baseball diamond, because I would make it very visible. And I would teach home plate was values and principles. And baseball, where you start is where you finish. So as you go around the bases, you want to start with values and principles, but as you solve that problem, you want to make sure you finish with values and principles, because the last thing you want to do is sacrifice your foundation, which is always the values and the principles. So I would make things very visible, but I would teach everyone how to problem solve, make decisions, and then I would empower them. And each one might be empowered differently, but great businesses empower their people. They tell them what the parameters are. And but when you as a leader surround yourself with problem solvers and decision makers, people who aren't afraid to make decisions, your job becomes a lot easier. And that was always the start. And in fact, one of the books that I have there, I wrote when COVID hit, called Understanding the 3 Phases of Crisis Management. The first phase is usually before the crisis, but who knows when's before the crisis, right?
Right.
You know? But before the crisis, that's why I tell you instantly, start teaching your people how to problem solve, make decisions, you know, and then empower them. Then the next phase is start teaching them the proper habits to exhibit daily. And look, there's a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So, I didn't write it, unfortunately, but I don't reinvent the wheel. It's a great book, and that's the one that start with the end in mind. Seek first to understand, which was actually one of my weaknesses. Because we want to be understood first. So start teaching those proper habits, because once you hit a crisis, think of the businesses in COVID. Those that hit a crisis that had leaders that weren't afraid to make decisions or to problem solve, and exhibit the right habits, were able to be more nimble. In fact, I'm doing a lot of training right now on naturally leadership, but customer service, because how COVID has changed some of the companies and their customer service ranks. And then I'm getting calls for change management, because it's how do we change, and our people weren't nimble enough, and that's just one of the big things. Great companies have to reinvent themselves.
I want to back up a little bit really quick. So what I'm curious on, you walk into a room, let's say whether you're doing like an assembly or something like that, like a high school teaching these young people how to be leaders one day, or you're going to a work environment where they have a sort of younger mindset, maturity wise. Basically, they don't know who you are. You are a complete stranger to them. They know that you're there to talk to them, but they aren't really paying attention. They don't really care as much as they should. What do you do when you come in to show and say, hey, I'm a leader. This is what I have to say. I expect your full attention and respect, back and forth.
There's a gentleman called Christopher Voss, and he does a lot of negotiation training now, but he was the United States top hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
And he teaches that the first thing you do when someone says, how can you help me? Or the last thing you don't do is just tell them your resume. Well, I'm the top hostage negotiator. The first thing you do is you decide. So like if he tells a story where a hostage was taken in the Philippines, and he was able to say, well, the people that took your people hostage, and then he was able to define them very quickly. In other words, so the first thing I do is I relate to the room with actual things I've done. Hey, this is me. You don't know me from Adam. Let me tell you about some of the things that I'm seeing out there today. And I start talking to things that relate to them.
Gotcha.
The biggest things that our youth, our younger group, whether it's millennials or Generation Z, they're very transparent. Transparency is very important to them.
Yeah.
Also, they want to know, they're big on values and what's the reason for existence, which I call your mission statement of your organization. Hey, here's my mission statement, but, look, sounds like a lot of fluff, but here's how it benefits you. No organization should not have a mission statement if they can't define by individual how it benefits them. So one of the first things I teach, it's your reason for existence. So that's how I capture the room. I usually always start with a story.
Yeah.
And I always say great leaders become great storytellers. So, sometimes it's a story when I was young, but then I go into it on how it relates as you grow up,
Yes.
But when I could capture them with the story and then broadcast into that, many times, depending on what type of group is then after the story, I'll start interacting with the audience and say, tell me about this. What's real effective is there's three things that there's one thing that I teach that has three elements. Is your behaviors are your actions. What drives your behaviors is your attitude, and what drives your attitude is your belief system. So when I can quickly go into the room and use some type of example where I can get a few of them to define what their belief system is, and then I could make an impact on that belief system, it drives their attitude is, hey, this guy has something to say. And their behavior is, man, I got more questions, or let me interact as well. But we teach this with leaders on behavior modification. someone that's not coachable or acting up or not listening to you, it's something in their belief system that's driving their attitude, that's driving that, and their behaviors. So it's just one of those things that as you define it and you become better at it, one of the things I coach and teach is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence plays a huge role in if you could break that down. Some are better than others, but the big thing or the blessing of emotional intelligence is that you can improve on it. What you call your EQ versus IQ is set in stone. EQ you can improve on.
So, how would you describe EQ, emotional intelligence? Like, can you tell? Like, Gavin and I are two very different people. Can you see an emotional intelligence in people easily, or is this something that when you're around people that you notice and you say, "Oh wow, they're really emotionally intelligent"? Like, how do you handle that and see that?
Yeah, well, there's different ways. Sometimes, there are times where in an environment it's more difficult. There's 5 components of emotional intelligence. First of all, are your self-awareness. The next one is, can you control your own emotions? My dad couldn't. My dad was a drill instructor before I was born, and so he was aware of his emotions, but he couldn't control them. The next one is motivation. Can you motivate yourself, and can you motivate others? And then your empathy, which is big. So can you? And there's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. Can you see or put yourself in other people's shoes? So sometimes when I'm dealing with you, we might have a conversation and I can relate whether you're having difficulty seeing a viewpoint from someone's side or put them in their shoes, whether you agree with them or not. The empathy at least allows you to see their point of view. And then the last one is your social skills, which is your ability to communicate, to be accepted, those types. And there's introverts and there's extroverts as well, and how that plays a role. So the most gifted person I've ever known, obviously, is Tony Robbins on emotional intelligence. He can really decipher you very well, and he uses a technique called mirroring as well, because he will mirror his personality to yours, to that you start thinking, you know what, there's something about this guy I like. And so he's able to then work, how he controls your emotions to bring you closer and then open you up a little more. So he's really gifted with that.
Wow. I think that's awesome. Go ahead, Gavin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was actually something that I would do when I was serving tables, is especially with accents. I would do like accents and personas. If I picked up a certain way people would talk or a certain slang that they would use, I would very slightly start to mimic that, because I knew subconsciously it would relax them and make them tip me more money in the end, but it would make it an overall more enjoyable experience for them, because they're like, oh, I can relate to this guy. This person understands me. Do you find that with different groups, because earlier you mentioned millennials and Gen X, do you find with different generations that it is, if not more or less difficult, but you just need to use a different technique as far as getting them to listen and getting through to them and teaching them these different morals and what it is to be a leader? Do they even have their own sort of mindset about what it is to be a leader and will disagree sometimes?
Well, there are. I have a book out there on millennials that you may have seen, How to Manage Millennials. I had a lot of success in managing millennials, and there's a lot of myths about them. So first of all, whatever types of groups they are, I would say the top 10 things that are important to each group, and I'm a baby boomer, right, are the same. And that's where when people would say millennials are so different, and then I'm like, well, I'm having a lot of success with them. I started defining that their top 10 things are the same as mine, baby boomer, but in different order. So we mentioned earlier that transparency is important to millennials. Well, that may be number 9 on my category, but when a leader was starting to, or a business was more transparent with me, I did appreciate it. I'm like, where pay and stability were probably number 1 and 2 in my category. Values and reason for existence, in other words, what's the company's mission statement and what's their values? Those are the 2 things that millennials look at. And then what is the transparency that they're going to show? And then how are they going to communicate with me? I always say great leaders over communicate. And I used to have a sign on my wall that said, until your people start mocking you, you haven't said your message enough. So, because I would tell everybody quickly, as soon as you met me, hey, if you're going to be part of my team, one of the first things I need to let you know is I repeat myself constantly. And I state that because what I might be repeating might be important to understand, so with any group, one of the first things I do, and it's just like with any leader, what I teach is set expectations early. Don't wait until they start saying, well, I didn't expect this conversation to go like this. I didn't know what the rules were. There's ways to set expectations earlier. So whether you're leading a team, you've taken over a new team, or whether I'm going into a group to just give a speech, I set expectations in the way I open that speech, and then I start talking about hey, this is who I am. Here's what we're going to do, but here's what I need from you. Or I'll go out. When you go out in the audience and you challenge someone early, you're setting expectations.
No, absolutely.
So
you can apply that to a lot of different things. Like you can apply that to a new employer. Like that's the first thing that I did when I went and applied for my job years ago. What I told them was like, hey, I have certain things. I have certain performances that I'm a part of. I have certain entertainment things that I do. If I will tell you in advance as soon as possible when those are. But if you schedule me for those days and I give you that advance, I will not be showing up to work. I made that very clear. And I think there's been 1 or 2 times that they did schedule me on one of those days, and I immediately caught it and told them, it's like, hey, this is the issue. And they said, oh, so sorry. We'll fix that right now.
As long as you communicate that, it's in fact, there's ways in my books I teach, if you're applying for a job, here, what are some of the things you do, because you can put yourself, but also if you're on that other side and you're hiring someone, because expectations start day one.
Absolutely.
And it actually starts before you hire that person. How you can set culture. I tell a story. I had a company out of Cleveland say, I want to hire millennials and I only have one. Some reason we're not attracting them. And we were on the phone. I said, let me go to your website. I'm like, I can't find your mission statement. Do you want to, is culture important to you? Yes. I said, well, if you want to drive that culture is important to you, showcase your mission statement. But especially for millennials, they want to know your reason for existence. I said, your values are, I found on page 3 on the 3rd tab, I would show those more prominently. They want to know what each day is going to be like. And your values are what you're saying we live by. And then we went to their hiring ad, and their hiring ad was, here's this job. And I said, well, if you want culture driven in your organization, and especially for millennials, your hiring ad should be, here's our mission, and here's our values that we live by, and here's the opportunity that we have that we're hiring for. If you think that you're a fit, please apply. I said, you're driving that from day one. I said, and in fact, then I tell them, when they come for that interview, the things that I would do is I would go out and say, hey, I'm Mark, pleasure to meet you. Here's a little questionnaire I'd like for you to fill out, and I'll come back for you. I would surprise them with just 10 questions to see if they researched our company. What is our mission? What is our vision? What is our values? What do we do in the community that you like? Who are our competitors? And at first it shocks them, but the word you'd be surprised how the word gets out. That company, especially when other employees are referring other people to be hired, they're like, you better come prepared because they're going to ask you this, right? That type. So it's just how you drive things and set expectations. And then when I'd hire people, I tell so many companies today, they're like, well, we're having these problems. I'm like, well, when did you have the expectation conversation? And they never have. I'm like, well, day one is, I'd be saying, hey, Brandon, great. One of the reasons I'm going to offer you this job is we exceed expectations, and I believe that you're a fit for that. Would you agree? Great. Yeah, we just don't meet expectations. We exceed them. We're about success here. And in fact, I've helped all these other people to be successful. And so, Brandon, it's real important to me because out of respect for you, I want to make sure that in the future, if you're doing something that I think might hinder your success, that I have the ability to point it out to you and correct you. Would you agree? Yes. Great. And you'd be surprised that then when I have to come make that correction, I remind you of that conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of, people get what you call left brain, the amygdala. When you go try to correct them, they get defensive. That's where the amygdala is. This is why how early you can set expectations from the beginning really helps. And then how you approach them also helps too. I have 6 keywords and phrases that I teach that is called for the logic, how to switch someone to logic, and it's things like, the last thing I want to do is not have this conversation and then your success be hindered, and because out of respect for you, because you're important to me. Those are some of those phrases that bring someone to the frontal cortex. So
yeah, you're taking away the focus from your lizard brain and bringing it back up.
Right. Yeah, because people are ready to be defensive naturally. That's that's emotional intelligence right there. That's one of the things that we teach in emotional intelligence.
I love that. I think that's great. You mentioned millennials, and I made a note of this because I did catch your book actually really quick while I have the chance, because I know Gavin and I jump back and forth a lot. Excuse me, I hiccuped there too. Coffee just is like hitting me today. This is Mark's website, and he has lots on here, guys, from the YouTube network to all the stations he's been on. A lot of reviews. I had to ask, did you make this origami, or is this just a picture?
It's just a picture.
I was going to say, I want to learn from you on origami right there.
Okay.
The thing that I liked here is the Millennial Factor. Your book right here is 10 Steps to Managing Millennials to Success. Now, I am a older millennial. I am literally the first generation, first year millennial. And if I all of a sudden have to mute, it's because we're having my parents are having yard work done and I'm here today. And they keep having the guy walk by and he's got the blower. And every time I get muted, I'm like, but being a millennial, I am told I'm very different as millennials. I have a work ethic and all that. And I don't know what that means, because I don't associate myself as not being a hard worker, but I understand there's a lot out there that people like my dad, who's in the other room, and if he hears this, he'll happily come in and give his opinion. But the opinion of millennials don't have a work ethic. They don't have strengths, and you have 10 steps that encourage the difference in work ethic. You don't obviously have to give us all 10, but can you give us a few that would entice me to I already want to read your book, just being honest.
Right. Well, first of all, let me say that I believe that's why there's a lot of millennial myths, because I will tell you that I say millennials are the most courageous workforce out there. And I always say I have to hold them back more than push them forward. So some of the differences are just because you grew up in the digital age that I didn't, especially those a little bit younger than you. You're used to quicker answers, quicker resources. And so sometimes when I have to hold you back, it's because, well, what's the answer to this? Well, I don't want to give you the answer yet, or let me tell you tomorrow. And it's like, well, I'm just going to Google it. I'm just right, So you're used to more of those. So I would always say I need to slow you up. In fact, I had a term that I would teach millennials, which is called stop, look, and listen. I want you to stop and understand your surroundings. I want you to look at what and have a good comprehension of what we're, and then listen to my coaching before you put something forward. But start teaching yourself that. So they had little signs in the work area, stop, look, and listen, that they would teach that.
Yep. I think a big issue with millennials in the workspace, especially too, is that we're very self-aware of emotion, but very, very few know how to handle it. So when they're put in stressful environments, they understand it. They understand they're in a stressful environment. They don't like it, but then they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah. Well, two things. I had a young millennial that worked for me that because I coach openly. Yeah. I'll coach you right there. I want others to hear. And she was brand new. I coached her and she started crying. And my coaching was actually positive coaching. It was more of, hey, instead of that, do it like this. And so I quickly had a conversation with her about, look, this is how I coach. I mentioned this when you were hired. Here are the expectations, but here's the why.
Yes.
So, and that's what millennials love, is the why. And we're baby boomers. You don't have to tell me the why. I get a paycheck for it. But when you tell me the why, you know what? I appreciate it. And so great coaches, people that are just great coaches, over communicate and tell the why, and they'll have success with millennials, because that's one of the big triggers, I would say. And I mentioned in that book a communication plan. That communication plan is when you're going to communicate what, how you're going to communicate it. And it could be in your HR documents. It could be on the wall. You want your mission and your vision and your values so people see them daily. But what are the expectations? How are you going to coach people? But all that communication comes down to the why. Why do we do it this way? Let me explain it. And because a lot of times it's like, well, I can Google. I think I got a better way. It's like, no. Hey, I appreciate that. And we value your opinion. So we teach them what I call first team environment, what a first team environment is. And once again, I don't reinvent the wheel. That comes from the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team book. Great book out there. But the first team environment is, I value your opinions. I want to hear your feedback, and especially if you disagree. But a first team environment is how you do that professionally. How a first team is, you don't go to someone else and say, I don't agree with them. Everyone has to own that first team environment, that they say, don't bring it to me. If I come to Gavin and it's like, man, let me tell you about what Brandon did. Gavin's like, no. If you have a problem with Brandon, you need to go have that conversation with Brandon. And when everybody owns that, and let me tell you,
well, that's what I'll do at work.
Thrive in it.
Working in a restaurant, people always have something they want to complain about. People always have something that they're angry at the waiting staff, they're angry at the cooks, they're angry at the management, and for whatever reason, people really enjoy coming to me about their issues. And some of them I'm able to solve directly. Some of them I'm able to go talk to management and get it solved that day. Other issues, they aren't actual issues. It's just a general broad statement, like, I hate how management runs the restaurant. And once I hear something like that, I let them do their rant. First I say, all right, why? And I let them do their rant and their spiel, and I give them attention while also still getting my job done and whatnot, because I know that they're just frustrated about one situation and going on a rant. And then I'll look at them and I'll say, okay, well, have you tried talking to them about it? And 9 out of 10 times they say no.
Yeah. And I would say, whether it's a restaurant, no matter what type of business, I would say hopefully that management team, the leadership team, would create a first team environment that people, because vulnerability is allowed here. You're allowed to be vulnerable. And when you bring it to me, the more you open that up, Ben, you don't know how many times that I'm like, you know what, Brandon, thank you for that. Help me be part of the solution, Brandon. Okay. And when I start pulling you in that you're part of the solution, how are you going to feel about your job the next day?
Better, because you're going to feel better that you're a part of the solution. You're going to be part of the team.
Transparent. It's inclusive. And that's why one of the myths on millennials is millennials will jump job to job. Well, why should I invest them? Right? They're going to have 7 jobs in 2 years. Why should I care? And it's like, well, it's because you haven't shown them what a career is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that the book teaches is, and I would say, if you look at the back of the book, I had millennials give me the endorsements. One guy was named Joshua that started for me at 20 years old. And at 23, he bought his first house. And he's just like, I'm 26 now, and, he's making 6 figures, type thing. And, and in fact, he's like, call me a millennial, I don't care, and but he knew he learned what a career was, and go ahead.
Sorry. So my question would be with, cause I see, I one of your other books is Lessons from Mom. And I am honestly intrigued by that in many ways, because I think that plays a crucial role. It's your parenting. It's who brought you up. It's what we learned from them that helped us be able to become who we are. But having that leadership to emotional intelligence is where we learned that. How does somebody learn from their mom and learn from their upbringing to have a better, you said EM, right? I want to make sure I'm using the right term.
EQ.
EQ. Thank you. EQ.
Yeah, just like IQ, EQ. So okay. You can take those 5 components and come up with a score.
Perfect. And then how do you learn from your mom? Like that book fast. Those were the two that I'm like, oh man, those are the ones that just. I judged your book by the cover. I'm sorry. I looked at it. Was like, I want to read them. How do you do that? What would be your tips for that book and stuff like that? Because it's
and
very
first of all,
interesting.
yeah, what's funny is my first book, became a bestseller, and I started blogging, and I would tell stories about growing up and the lessons my mom taught me and how that made me a leader to what I am today. And my LinkedIn went to 30,000 followers. I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, I think I need to write that book. And I wrote it in 3 months because it was in my head and in my heart. And but I tell, first of all, mothers have the first impact, so to understand the impact that they have. But I think that we all need to say, what was the things our mothers were telling us, and why were they? It's the why, and it was always for our benefit. They knew that it would be better for our upbringing, but they also, whether it's by instinct or not, know that it's not only for our upbringing at that moment, but really up all the way to adulthood. So I tell stories. I think it's broken down in 5 chapters, 40 stories. That starts when I'm in kindergarten, and it's the difference between right and wrong, type stuff. But also there's a story in there where, and it's probably around 3rd grade, where I take all these tests, Myers-Briggs, there's so many different ones. They all tell me that I am an introvert. And people are like, well, if you speak in front of 1,000 people, I'm like, I'm still an introvert. It will say, if I'm in a group, I'll tend to go to those I'm comfortable with. So it teaches is that what effort I have to put forward. So there's a lesson in there where my mom always wanted me to be a part of something, because she says, I want to get that introvert out of you. In other words, so I tell people, if you want to see me square dance, I'm a great square dancer, because she put me in that when I was in 3rd grade. But she did it for my benefit. In other words, that the more, whether it's comfortable or not, that I am part of something, then it'll become easier. She'd always tell me confrontation is a benefit, which is one of my, and in other words, and that was as a teenager. But then she would ask me when I was an adult, managing people, that confrontation doesn't mean being argumentative. It means, are you confronting issues as they happen and not letting them pile up? Because the more you confront them, you'll get better at how you confront them, and then you'll get known for it. And as a leader, I was known for, Mark doesn't let anything sit, and that wasn't a bad reputation to have.
No,
right? In fact, people would come to you more because I know he's going to take action, or I know he's going to do something. So just start thinking about what were the lessons and why. I tell one story where I would take my, at the time, I was divorced, and I would take 2 of my boys to, hey, Mom, can you watch Joshua and Matthew? And, she loved them, of course, whatever. But one time she says, you're making yourself very busy. I think you need to do something that matters today. Why don't you cancel whatever you're doing and go spend the time with the boys? Because you won't regret. And at the end of each day, you need to ask yourself if you do something that matters. And that stuck with me. That I think you'll see it on one of my blogs that I would teach my leaders. At the end of the week, did you say, did I do something that matters this week? Did I make an impact with somebody? So it all relates to leadership. And, the signs that, I always say, my quote was, my mom was the best leadership coach who chose to be a housewife. I think that's why everyone gravitated to it, because that's all. She was a housewife. She wasn't a PhD at anything, but she would just always correct immediately. Confrontation is a benefit, but then tell me why she's correcting. If I was punished, she would never relent to that punishment. It was like, no, I told you for the weekend, you restrict it, those types. And that's, as leaders, sometimes we relent, so I call that rewards or consequences. It's one of my speeches I give on my expectations. I manage by rewards or consequences. Yeah. I'd love to manage you, Brandon, by rewards every day, but there's going to be consequences. But how quickly, Brandon, that you show your behavior modification with those consequences, I'll get you back on the reward side. And so you could see how I took those and it just related in business.
So I think one of our commenters made a great comment going exactly with what you're saying. Do you remember Chicken Soup for the Soul?
Yeah. Well, if you look on my website, on next to Jack Canfield on his TV show. He's the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
I'm on your website, and that's him sitting right next to you. Oh my gosh, that's Jack Canfield right next to you. Guys, that's on his website. I just shared the link. I thought it was a great comment. Chicken Soup for the Millennial Leader. You should write that, because you really are hitting some very big points that, as a millennial who has been in many leadership positions, there's stereotypes out there. And being an older millennial as well, people are like, oh, no, there's a stereotype for the younger ones. And actually, one of my questions is, do you notice a difference in the ages of millennials and how you would lead? And I kind of actually got your answer in a different way without having to ask the question. And my thing is, you have these great ways of teaching people, and you're not just doing it from a baby boomer's perspective, but you're looking at the next 2 generations and 3 after that, saying, no, this is what leadership is. This is what entrepreneurs should be looking for. And I think that's a very, very hard thing for a lot of people to break through as managers, leaders, and all that. What was your hardest part about learning your emotional intelligence and being able to balance that? I get told all the time, I have intelligence, but my emotional intelligence is where I need to work on. So I have books on this, I'm reading things, and I'm trying to adapt. Don't you be nodding over there, Gavin. I'm watching you.
Yeah, listening.
But like, what would be an emotional intelligence way? Like, how did you know you needed to work on it? And what was that first step you took for yourself to get better?
Well, there were several ways, and I could go into lessons of, I remember a high school friend dying, and it was someone that wanted to be a closer friend, but I never had time for that. And he died of a brain hemorrhage, and it just really affected my mom. I went to his wake. My mom knew nothing about it until I came home, and she could notice the difference in me. She's like, "What's wrong?" And I told her, she's like, "Oh my God, how's the family? That's terrible." And that, that's where she taught me the lesson that, she called me Mijo. I'm Hispanic, so Mijo, you need to understand that life's not about you. It's about others and how you impact others. And that was like, it really jumped me up in emotional intelligence. So that was one of those stages of, I started seeing things of, had you let that friend in, because he was a great guy, the intelligence that I grew with, I started recognizing the impact I could have on others as a teenager. I started like, if I took a positive step towards them first, and that really catapulted me. One of the other lessons I tell you that my dad was that drill instructor was, we were in business together when I was in my, like about 27. My dad retired from his business and opened a market, and his golden hand, it did really well. Opened a second market, So he asked me into the business. So I was in business with my parents. Loved being with them every day. But when we would make decisions, my dad would, if he didn't like it, he'd shut it down. He knew he could still intimidate. He was my father, and that was just people that know that they can intimidate, do it naturally. And finally, my mother said, "You need to confront your dad, or you need to leave, because your decisions or the ideas are brilliant." But and she used the term, "The moment you allow yourself to walk on eggshells, there'll be eggs at every turn." That was my mom. She just had great sayings, meaning that there'll be eggs at every turn because it'll happen more and more. Yeah. And I want you, you can be a very good leader. So I confronted my father that night, told him I needed to talk to him. We went out in this backyard, and I told him, "Look, and my ideas need to be heard, or I need to be empowered, or I need to leave." And he naturally tried to intimidate me, tried to shut it down. And I said, "No, then I need to leave." And he just got really quiet. And then he hugged me, and he said, "This is the moment I've been waiting for." And I tell in the story that my relationship with my father was never the same. It was better. And I'm the youngest of 7 kids in a Hispanic family, that when my dad passed from pancreatic cancer, he told all my siblings, "Mark is in control of everything. I trust Mark." And if so that this shows the respect I had earned from my dad. And so that jumped me up, because part of emotional intelligence is how do you confront things and you live your values is what that is. In other words, had I continued going on, I would not be living my values. They would be suffering. So those were some of the things that catapulted me in emotional intelligence, and with other things. So I can once again relate to my mother's stories, but how it impacted it. She would always tell me too, I want you to always find mentors. Always don't think that you know everything, but as you find mentors, find other people to mentor, because you will probably learn more from you mentoring others than from the mentors who are mentoring you. You will learn from their experiences. And when you mentor others, how does that not advance your emotional intelligence? Experiences that they've been through, what they're going through. Maybe, hey, I can relate to that. Sometimes it's, I can't relate to that, but tell me about that. So that builds on your empathy, so those kinds of things. Yeah.
I think it's really important. This goes to show how important it is to have, if not both parents, both of those sort of parental and mentor figures. Because I do believe that if you did not have your mother there to support you, to stand up and talk to your father and stand your ground like that, that you'd be a very different person. Because honestly, I'm not sure, and I don't know if you know or if you think or not, you would have done that without her support. But then without him being that way as well, it wouldn't have given you that obstacle. Because that's always a big issue and a big controversial thing with parenting is, do you be really tough and tough on your kids so they become stronger, or do you be really supportive so that way they blossom? And you kind of need a balance. That's difficult to really do when you're one person. If you're like a single parent, or if you're a single unit, both of you being really hard, you do need that balance of, hey, I am an obstacle, and then, hey, he is an obstacle or she's an obstacle. You need to stand up. Here's your support to get over it.
I think that had I not confronted him then, I thought I would have had another situation in my career where I had to really step up. But you see, it would have prolonged it. So my mom doing that at the time. I learned so much from my father too. I mean, he was just 8th grade education, but just great in business. He went on owning his own business, sold it, retired, opened bought a little market, Golden Touch, went to the second market. Just that type. And he would, one of his great sayings was, fear is between success and failure. You decide which way you go. So, that fear is right between that. But I will say he was the toughest man I ever knew to the day of his death. He died of pancreatic cancer, but wouldn't take his medicine. The doctors were like, he has to be in a lot of pain, but he would wake up and say brisket. And so we'd go buy him brisket, up the day before he died, he ate brisket,
But it was his dad, Ron Swanson from Parks and Recs. Is that who he was?
Probably a good example. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you get those examples from both parents. My dad was one of those, he would always defend the family, that retired drill. Someone looked at us the wrong way. He got arrested once in a market because someone pushed my mom aside to steal a bottle of wine, and he chased them down the street and shot in the air, and the police arrested my dad, but as years went by, our market, it was funny. We weren't hassled. And I asked one of the women that worked for us, hey, what's the word on the street? Why aren't we hassled? And she said, the old man is crazy. He'll shoot you for a bottle of wine.
Yeah. Did your mother just stay at the grocery store checking out the groceries while he was chasing down this random civilian?
Yeah. Well, he was just every day he was an idea man. So that's where I love my dad, very innovative. And, he died. My mom died in 2005. My dad died in 2007. And it's the last story in the book, Brandon. I'm going to spoil it for you, but it's called God's Timing's Perfect. My mom passed. She was very frail. She was buried on her birthday, May 3rd, which is coming up. And so that was, God's timing was perfect. How can you not know that was God's timing?
Yeah.
My dad moved to, she was buried in a small town in Granger, Texas. And So my dad moved there, and he wanted to be with her. He would take care of the cemetery. If there was like children's graves that weren't taken care of, he would take care of them. And he just started serving the church. And he would go with the church to speak to others, and preach or just spend time. And that when he died, the priest said there will not be enough room in the church. You don't know the impact your dad's made in this town. And he was right. It overflowed, and people got up and say, I came to the Lord because of your father. It was just really touching. And so those were the 2 years that he changed. And I say God's timing was perfect, because he was this hard edge person, but then he wanted to be with my mom. But God says, you're not ready. I need to change your heart. And after the funeral, because I had bought my dad a riding mower that was like a toy for him.
Yeah.
The people would come up and say, your dad would just come by and mow my yard. And I made a joke. I'm like, he didn't know how to turn it off. He had to keep waiting until it ran out of gas, So, we would joke about it. But it just showed, it's a small little town, and everyone knew my dad because of that, So it just shows me how things move in life.
That's amazing. I understand those riding mowers. They're fun. My grandmother, she had probably 3 acres of land, and I remember being 12 years old. And that's my favorite thing to do, was put in my earbuds and go on the riding mower.
Yeah, he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it.
He says earbuds. I remember.
I said earbuds. I didn't have earbuds. I still don't have earbuds.
Ready? Wait. You ready, Gavin?
Yeah.
I used to have to cut the grass with a CD player that would skip if you hit the bumps wrong. So don't give me this. Mark knows what I'm talking about, those days where you're cutting the grass and all of a sudden the CD would skip and you're like, no.
I got a Walkman.
I should probably have an old Walkman packed away too. So
you could probably steal it.
Right.
I found an 8-track in my parents' basement, and I laughed so hard. I'm like, I haven't seen one of these in years. Oh, and then look what Brett comes in. He goes, I've used a portable 8-track player before.
There you go.
Well, I had one of my kids. I had a '69 Chevy Nova, my first car. But so I wish I still had that car today. But they said, well, what's that in your dashboard? I said, well, I had the cassette player, and then in the glove compartment, I had the 8-track. I said, I was cool. So I had, the cassette and the 8-track.
Yeah.
So,
you were tearing it up, man.
Yeah.
I love it. So at the end of our show, you've been, guys, I have put his links in here, Mark's links. I'm going to copy it one more time, post it right here for everybody, so it's right up front. Do yourself a favor. Go follow his website. Mark's information is all throughout there. His YouTube network is on here. I've already subscribed and hit the button to get you, Mark, and keep following you and get your notifications. We love to end each episode with a positive affirmation. So I'm actually going to bring our regular guest, Brett Gordon, back in. Hello, Brett. Funny thing is, I'm sitting here going, you two would like bond so quickly. Brett does a podcast for businesses or people to his company that focuses on teaching leadership styles through the eyes of like one square at a time, like a chessboard. Right. And you have to know how everybody is with getting the proper tools and building your best leadership. And then he pulls out like movies and he's like, oh, so Thor has this tool, and he does this amazing leadership style that you don't forget how to carry your tools with you. I love that this was the two that were able to connect. I think you guys work well together. We should talk afterwards. But we end each episode with a positive affirmation for everybody to go through their day. I will go first, and then I'll go Brett, Gavin, and then Mark, you're going to go laughs. That way it's simple, and you see how it is, no pressure on you, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Perfect. So, guys, we had a great episode today. Mark has 3 best-selling books and 2 best-selling children's books on Amazon. Do yourself a favor. Go over there and check them out. The links are in the bio. As for today, it is Monday. This is the day that shapes your week. This is the day that shapes you. This is the day that starts you. Do yourself a favor and don't let the week get you now. Don't let it ruin you. Don't let it put you in a negative mindset. Don't let it push you in any bad ways. Start your week looking at your best you, looking into your heart, and building the best you ever can. Because if Monday starts bad, it's very easy to wake up Tuesday and then Wednesday and Thursday. And by the end of the week, if you haven't broken out of that, you've already lost a week. Don't let other people's drama ruin your light. Brett.
Perfect. Goes along with what I was talking about earlier and what I'm going to say right now, and that is watch what you eat. Watch what you feed your soul. Take advantage of those positive opportunities to really feed yourself and move yourself in an upper spiral as opposed to focusing on the negatives, which can take you down. And you have to actively choose to do that. You can't just allow the world to do it to you. You are actively living in this world and controlling the world around you. So watch what you eat, feed yourself positive, feed your soul the right things, and the rest of the week and the rest of your life will be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Next is Mr. Gavin Kerr.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that was touched on earlier, is figuring out what your morals and standards are and what exactly you want in life. Mark was talking about earlier with millennials and baby boomers, they tend to have the same 10 list, but in different order. So try to figure out personally what your order is and what is important to you in life, but then acknowledge that others, while may have a similar list, it is in different order, and that's all right. But if you figure out what you want in life and in what order will make you the happiest, then that'll make it a hell of a lot easier to start planning or figuring out how you want to shape your life around that mold.
Well done. Well said. And Mark.
Well, I think you guys all crushed me, but I'll finish with a story from my mother. So, I talked about many times we all like affirmation, and we would go to our parents saying, hey, I want to be a police officer. And we wanted to sometimes hear if that was pleasing to them. Oh, that's great, right? Then the next week, I want to be a fireman. And I would do that. And one time I asked, Mom, what would you want me to be when I grow up? And she looked at me and she said, Mijo, the one thing I want you to be is a good example. So whether what you do daily, how you treat others, and even when you do something wrong, how you face those consequences, I want you to be a good example. And if you are a good example, I will smile down from heaven on you.
I love that. I love that. Wow. What a way to end. Mark, you have been phenomenal. What a guest. I'm actually going to get you and Brett into communication because I was watching Brett in the background. He was smiling and he's nodding and having his leadership styles that he teaches. I think it was amazing that you used Tony Robbins as an example because that's actually one of the ones Brett uses all the time too. Okay. And he studied his works very intensely and gone to the classes. So perfect connection there. I think it's funny how the universe works, but Mark, thank you so much for being such a great one. Everybody take that advice and throughout your week, be that example, be an example, show positivity, show the love that you would want others to show. This has been Java Delight. I almost did what Gavin did. And we switched names recently. So it was like, what was the name? But guys, this is Monday, April 12th, 13th. It's during the week. It's a Monday. And this was a great first day of the week. I love everything everybody brought today. Mark, I look forward to checking you out again soon. Brett, talk to you soon. Gavin, see you in the morning, my friend. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.